and I've been asked to moderate this very topical session on economic freedom and combating corruption. I've got a very distinguished panel with me here today. On my left, Mr. Wan Saiful Wan Jan, the CEO of Ideas Malaysia, my moonlighting boss, I'm an associate there. To my right, Professor Edmund, Terence of University Malaya, and to my far right, Mr. Khoo Kay Peng, the political analyst. So I guess in the interest of keeping time for questions, I think what I'll do is we'll give each analyst maybe about 7 minutes to say their piece, and then we'll just go along straight into questions and answers. Yeah? So I think we'll start with one. The floor is yours.
I'm not sure if this is going to work with such a small audience. How do we do it? Tak apa lagi Dr. Mujahid lah, Ratna, lalu kat situ. It feels like we're talking to ourselves. Okay, let me just do this very informal way. Who's doing the slides? How if I control the slide? Can I just tell? I think when we talk about economic freedom, it's really important to understand what economic freedom is. And I'm going to use a global study that actually defines what economic freedom is. This is the study is something called the Economic Freedom of the World Index. It's produced annually by a body called the Fraser Institute based in Canada. They work together with lebih kurang 150 organisasi worldwide, 90 organizations worldwide, and they cover 157 countries. The latest one has just been released on the 14th of September. I'm going to use this index to define what economic freedom is, because they look at the level of economic freedom in the world. And then, the corruption part, we have two experts talking about corruption. Not that they are corrupt, but... Wow. Okay, this is a bit too wordy, I'm going to move on. Economic freedom basically means you need to have four things. The index defines economic freedom as a situation where you have personal choice, you are able to exchange things voluntarily, you have the freedom to enter into a market and compete in the market, and you have protection of physical and intellectual property. So basically, ada personal choice, ada and when you want to exchange something, nak beli barang ke, nak jual barang ke, the exchange is based on voluntary movement rather than you being forced to sell whatever you have. There is a freedom to enter and compete. Jadi kalau ada monopoly, that's not economic freedom. And there is also protection of your property. Jadi kalau sekiranya kita ada harta, kita nak jual, orang lain tak boleh tiba-tiba datang ambil macam tu saja. And this is the elements of economic freedom used by the index to measure economic freedom globally. And that brings us to this definition. Economic freedom is present when individuals are permitted to choose for themselves and engage in voluntary transactions as long as they do not harm the person or property of others. So that's an important part in understanding economic freedom. And I think I want to provide that definition sebab bila cakap mengenai yang selalu jadi ialah bila cakap je mengenai economic freedom, cakap mengenai free market, cakap mengenai capitalism, immediately people say, oh jadi nanti habis semua company akan mulut segala-galanya. It's not that. You see, and under a free economic a situation where the economy is free, you should not have monopolies. There's a difference between businesses and the market. Businesses are always interested in enlarging their presence. They would want to have monopolies. But a market situation is one in which there is freedom for others to enter into the market and compete with them. So, in theory at least, the market will prevent monopolies from happening, and whereas businesses would want to have those monopolies. Jadi ada beza between people who are defending the market and those who are defending businesses. Usually people in business and people who run businesses do not really enjoy the fact that there is an open market operating in a particular environment. This is why when we measure economic freedom dalam index, dalam the global study, what they do is they look at several different things. There are 5 components of economic freedom. One is the size of government. They look at how big is the government spending in particular economy. They look at transfers and subsidies. Basically, I'm just going to highlight a few things yang mungkin relevant kepada kita. So, kalau sekiranya government spend a lot, that means there is less economic freedom. The idea here is the government is not really a voluntary body. So, katalah kalau sekiranya a government wants to spend, how do they take the money before they spend? They will need to take it from somewhere. And how do they take the money from you? Usually through taxation. Malaysia lain, ada DLC. Okay? So we can discuss about DLCs later on. But the fact that the government has to take through coercion from you through this thing called taxation means that when you have a huge government, you have less economic freedom. And then tax rate, again, is because of that thing. The higher the tax rate, the less economic freedom you have. Then the other measure is legal system and property rights. The idea is there must be rules, there must be regulations. You cannot just have a system where any company can do anything what they want in the market. The market has to be ruled by some sort of regulations. And that's why judicial independence is important, courts, impartial courts is important. The presence of military interference will reduce economic integrity. Integrity of legal system is important. Legal enforcement of contracts, reliability of the police is even a factor in economic freedom. And then, I'm not going to touch so much about sound money. Basically, this is about bank negara sama ada bank negara ni boleh percaya atau tidak. So this is about monetary policy. The rest are fiscal policy mainly. So freedom to trade internationally, whether ada halangan atau tidak kalau kita nak jual barang kita ke luar negara, ada halangan atau tidak kalau kita nak beli barang daripada luar negara. Sama ada trade barriers atau tidak, wujud atau tidak black market in the exchange rates, and so on and so forth. And the last one that is measured is the quality of regulation. So credit market regulation, how much protection is afforded. I know we need to finish, right? How much the labor is protected, and what's the quality of business regulation. So the point I want to make here is when we talk about economic freedom, it is about how well is the market run and governed in a particular country. It is not about companies running rampant. That is not economic freedom. One MDB is not the creature of a free market. It's a creature of the government. Okay, so this is an example where you have DLC, baru tanya pula kenapa one MDB boleh jadi, padahal kita defend the DLCs. And moving very quickly to moving quickly to the issue of corruption. You look at the top 10 economically free countries using that index. I have just 2 more slides here. You will see that these are the countries yang dianggap sebagai paling free dari segi ekonomi. Hong Kong, Singapore, New Zealand, Switzerland and so on. Basically, kalau kita nak holiday, biasanya kita tengok holiday kat negara-negara ni lah. Berbanding dengan countries that are not economically free. I think it's very rare to have people yang kata tahun ni kalau cuti aku nak bercuti kat Angola. Memang tak pernah dengar lagi sekat ni. And that's a reason for that. You know, that's an issue of quality of life. It's an issue of whether you want to actually go and spend your money over there or not. And when you look particularly at corruption based on the data, what you see is countries that are more free. This is the relationship between economic freedom and corruption. So lagi tinggi means higher score means lower corruption level. The data actually shows that the more free the economy is, the less corruption there is in that country. That's what the data actually shows. So the top quartile and the bottom quartile, ini negara-negara yang ekonominya tidak free, yang tu economically lebih bebas. So yang lebih bebas, less corruption. And that is what the data says. It has been reinforced so many times in the report. The structure of the chart is the same throughout the report for the last 25 years it has been done. So year after year it's been proven that there is the more free countries, the more economically free countries are less corrupt. And I think that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wan. Professor Terence.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith. I'd like to address just one question in my 7 minutes. And this question deals with a paradox. How is it that Malaysia has met a country which is known for a lot of corruption since the 1980s has managed to register such high growth rates. And to build on what Wan Saiful has just said, why didn't corruption hinder development despite its devastating impact on economies such as Myanmar or the Philippines, or as you have seen in Africa and Latin America? Now to answer this question, I'd like to expose you all to two important concepts. One is what I call developmental corruption, and the other is called degenerative corruption. So let me tell you the definition of both. Degenerative corruption occurs when the economic resources are distributed by the politician to fellow politicians or other businessmen, which are not used in a productive manner. In most cases, they even take these resources out of the country. So there's no development going on here. In many cases, what we are talking about is merely theft or embezzlement from the state. Developmental corruption is, on the other hand, something which has got a transactive problem. Corruption results as a creation of a market where property rights are transferred from politicians to businessmen in a non-transparent, non-accountable manner. But here's the thing. When the businessman takes these resources, he knows he can make money out of it if he employs these resources well. So he develops these resources. And we have seen this happening. We have seen this happening in the sense that these resources are taken, profits are made from them, and we see reinvestment coming out of these resources. Now, the question here is this: what sets Malaysia apart from cases like Philippines or Burma or Latin American countries and African countries which are extremely corrupt? It's not the level of corruption that's important here when we compare these countries. What is important is how corruption functions. That's the difference. Because the level of corruption in this country is very high, comparable to what we have seen in African countries. So how do you account for this difference? It's how corruption functions. So here, when we talk about degenerative corruption, and when you look at other countries like Latin America, and specifically in Africa, Haiti or Jaya are good examples. If you look at these countries, what you're seeing is first a kleptocracy. That means the leaders of the state plunder from the state. They steal the resources from the state. And they usually channel it to outside countries. Philippines, Marcos, is a clear example of kleptocracy. Just took from the state and sent it abroad and created all these accounts abroad. Now the channeling of these resources or businesses have no productive dimension here. They contribute nothing to the economy. That explains why these countries have also remained so backward. In the case of developmental corruption, let's just take Malaysia and let's talk just about Malaysia. In the early days, when corruption became most rampant, primarily in the 1980s under Mahathir Mohamad, there was an arm's length relationship between the Prime Minister and UMNO and the companies that got all these rents from the state. And these rents, when they got it, they were employed in a way in which we could see the outcomes of these kinds of corruption. One example is the North-South Highway. The other example is Baku. And a more recent example is PKFZ. If you go and see PKFZ today, PKFZ is not bad, you know. In all three cases, the people who built it were foreign companies. But the rents were given to politicians or businessmen aligned with the state. But the contracts got done. More recently, we are seeing a different kind of corruption. We are seeing a kind of corruption. Let's take the case of the NFC scandal, the National Feedlot scandal, where the rent was given to a prominent UMNO leader and her family, and we didn't see much production coming out of that. And even more recently, what we are seeing is 1MDB. So what we are seeing here in Malaysia is a shift from developmental type of corruption to what we now can term as degenerative corruption, if you are to believe the allegations that have been made against the government. Now there's another important point when we talk about degenerative or even developmental corruption. Regardless of the type of corruption, for it to work, it must involve banks. And this is where things get very dangerous for us. Because if you look at all the major banks in this country today, they are controlled by the government. Maybank, CRMB, RHB, AFID, all controlled directly or indirectly by Ministry of Finance Incorporated, which is controlled by the Minister of Finance, who happens to be the Prime Minister. If you look at the 1MDB scandal, what is extremely interesting is how 1MDB tried to get direct control of RHB Bank from Taib's family. Fortunately, that didn't happen and it ended up under the control of EPF. I dread to think what would have happened to our country if RHB had fallen under the control of 1MDB, direct control, even outside the ambit of the Minister of Finance Incorporated. Today, we are looking at the case of 1MDB. What is also very interesting is how Affin Bank, controlled by LGAT, is now being used to try and bail out 1MDB. Degenerative corruption with the abuse of state-owned banks to solve serious problems that have emerged. So my conclusion, I'm not here to make a case that developmental corruption is okay. In fact, when we had the 1997 crisis, the Asian currency crisis, developmental corruption was shown to be non-sustainable. For a long time, people looked at Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand and said, these are developmental states, there is corruption, but look at the great development that has happened. An outcome of the developmental state model is corruption, so leave it be, let it be. But when all these economies collapsed, even developmental corruption was thrown out the window and said we can't have any more developmental corruption. And soon after that, even in Malaysia, we had major reforms, corporate governance reforms. A whole slew of them were introduced after 1997. And then in 2008, we had the global financial crisis. And when the global financial crisis occurred, when we looked at all the problems in the country, we suddenly realized these are the same problems that we saw in 1997. What happened to all the reforms that had been introduced in 1997? The problem here is this. We are talking about reforms which do not involve institutional change, devolution of power to relevant authorities. It is not that the government doesn't know this. When Najib came to power, under his government transformation plan, his big agenda for change, he himself said, I am going to eradicate corruption, patronage, and rent-seeking. It's there. He knew to resolve the problems of the 2008 crisis and to get the economy out of the mire it was stuck in, you had to deal with these problems. And if you look at Pemandu and the NKRA, they have a lot of objectives about eradicating corruption. But look at where we are today. 6 years on since that period when Najib came to power, the situation is worse. We have now to face serious allegations of a kleptocratic state, of a prime minister who is alleged to have plundered from the state and put the money into his own personal account. Let's not deal with it. I'm not even dealing with the money that has gone abroad. So this is a serious situation. How do we deal with this? This is the issue we need to discuss. One of the most important things we have to discuss is how do we devolve power from the office of the executive where power is concentrated. Even Mahathir has been moved to say there's too much power in the office of the Prime Minister. However, I must end by asking, who is to blame for this? Thank you.
Well, you have heard the two speakers who actually defined the context very well. Make my life, very, very easy on both economic freedom and also combating corruption. So I shall focus on two things. Let's get dirty and focus on the challenges. What I think are the main obstacles, masalah utama. Dan bagaimana untuk kita mengatasi situasi sebegini, halangan-halangan yang berlaku di Indonesia. Number one, bearing the economic freedom, focus on economic freedom. You can have your choice, you can exchange, you have your IP rights protected. I think one of the halangan, one of the main things for facing Malaysia is access to education, access to good quality education. Yes, you got to start from there. If you don't have the right knowledge, you are not given access to the best education system. Of course, without policymakers have an interest to turn around and change it for their own benefit, you're not going to be equipped with the right kind of skills to do whatever you like. So economic freedom is then curtailed, is it? So number one we have to address is the education part. And number two, for Malaysia, economic freedom is also pretty much curtailed by who you know. Of course, Prof has seen about NFC. Belalumbu. A lot of us also know about Belalumbu. But why certain people are getting the grants, the money to do it. It's because of what we Chinese say, one C, is political patronage, relationships, and that is going to close up many opportunities for Malaysians as well. So that part of it will have to be addressed. I mean, even taxi drivers, they are complaining these days, pelanggan dah drop lah, jumlah pelanggan dah berkurang kan. Dan selanjutnya masalah kan, because people are not going on taxi. But if you ask them, are they controlling the licenses in the hands of people who will be given access, concessions into this thing? So that is one of the hindrances. Number three, of course, in capital and resource allocation. If you don't have access to financial resources, you don't have economic freedom. As simple as that. Some people can get 2.6 billion in his account. Some people want 2006 also pun susah. Go to the bank, get rejected, So without financial accessibility, you don't have economic freedom. Because economic freedom has to be funded. This is the reality of a capitalist system. These are the third challenges. And number four, I totally agree with Wan Saiful. Economic freedom will improve if there is less government intervention and interference. Like in the case, less government is better for economic freedom. But we have a case where our government are competing with the people for access to economic activities or doing economic activities. So of course you're going to lose out, because if you compare the kind of resources that they can access, the banks that they control, the people are going to be given less. That is less, more government. I think that is going to be the fourth challenge for us. And number five will be prejudices, sectarian prejudices. Oh, you are certain community, certain religion, you cannot do certain activity. Okay? Kalau you kat mas, oh, you cannot serve arak even if you don't drink. So you shouldn't be working there. So prejudices is going to curtail economic freedom. And I'm going to go quickly on how we can actually address that. Out of it again is education and empowerment. If the people have no access to good education, you can't have economic freedom. More economic freedom. Number two, rule of law. There is a distortion in Malaysia. Why they distorted the process, rule of law? Because if not, you don't have to find middlemen to solve something for you. Middlemen will then go to the ministry and try to solve something for you, and corruption happens. So it's tied back to corruption. But rule of law means if you fulfill the requirements, you should be allowed licenses, you should be allowed access to concessions, you should be allowed to do your economic activities. So rule of law is very strongly something we need to do. Number three, of course, less government. We have explained that. Number four, we have to improve incentive for people who will take up economic and entrepreneurship. We've got to encourage people. So grant subsidies are not the kind of way, the right way for Malaysia is inducement. So for people forget about problem lah, masalah lah kan, malam boleh tidur lah, kalau dapat free, okay lah, kita tidur boleh lah. But after 2-3 days, you use up your brain, then what's going to happen? So that has got to be changed. And number five, you've got to promote healthy competition in merit-based rewards. So that is going to help economic freedom. People will be more willing. If I'm good, I'm capable, I go in the economy, I get rewarded. So that is going to enhance it. So again, very quickly about corruption. What is the problem? Again, how to do that? How to solve that? Is that with the education? Again, two things also you need education. Education has to start very early, so the society know what is right and wrong. I think we have been go on for too long thinking that if the leaders are doing their job, okay lah kalau dia basic skill, kan? Maybe condition to accept that kind of thing. Developmental politics lah, they blunder, okay lah, mati blunder tapi dia bina jalan raya, dia bina jabatan, tengok petunas tahun naik juga, kau bicik. But at what cost is it? So the right or wrong has to come from education. Number two, you have to abolish race-based and religious-based affirmative action, because they are hiding behind that. And you see that every time there's a corruption, more practices, they are hiding behind the race card. So how are you going to get to them? If they're always doing that. So we have got to counter that as well. Number three, we've got to strengthen public institutions, and separation of power. If mechanism of public institutions are not there to curb corruption, if AG can kena sack, courts are actually powerless, you cannot bring the executives to the book. You cannot get them to the book. It's what is happening, centralization of executives. So we have got to push political leaders, including the newly formed amanah to put public institutions, strengthen public institutions in the system at the forefront, not religion at the forefront. That has to be an important thing. Number 4, democratization. You got to deepen democracy. When you deepen democracy, then you will accept that priority should be put on system. Kita utamakan sistem dan bukan personality ataupun ideologi politik. And number 5, through all these things, hopefully the society will understand the economic cost of corruption to the society. You will see development, but the sustained cost of corruption eventually will emerge when crisis hits. When a crisis hits you, then you will realize the cost of corruption. But the society need to understand that, so that we know we can differentiate. Now people are complaining about what? GST, kena bayar 6%. 100 over countries in the world have GST. That shouldn't be the main problem. The main problem is corruption. So the shift of focus, I think the society needs to stay focused on what are the root cause of the problems. Number 6, we got to promote marriage and not relationship. I think it's been going on for too long. Who you know, from which family, from which background. That these are the things that are really important. Minister's son often ikat penjaga pintu kalau nak jumpa bapa kena jumpa anak. Nak jumpa anak kena bagi hadiah. I said a lot of them they are complaining, driving nice car, having this, having that. So that has to be curbed, and that is going to be one of the ways to curb corruption. And finally, hard to say, but I'm going to tell you this, we have to end patronage politics. And patronage politics happens in all political parties. Don't just blame the Barisan Nasional. It happens in the opposition politics as well. So you have to also address that, before you can come to a point that really, you focus on the system, you focus on merit. If you can't, then you have to move down. There's no accountability. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. Thank you for that wonderfully stimulating discussion, well within our limits. It's great. So now here's for everyone's favorite part, questions and comments. Questions are always better than comments, but don't let that stop you. Anyone? Questions? Yes. If you could identify yourself as well.
My name is Wan Saiful Wan Jan. I'm from Petaling, Jaya, in the Persatuan Penduduk Jaya. I came interested to listen. That's all. But it's very interesting that you mentioned economic background. I also have an economic background, but I'm not a practicing economist. I was surprised that you mentioned that we have such thing as economic government corruption. Is new that I never heard before. But my question is that the corruption is rampant, as you say. How did the government manage to keep the inflation level low, not a rampant inflation compared to Brazil or those days? That is very surprised. And I think, Mr. Wan Jan, I look at your freedom of economic freedom. Basically, I'm a businessman. I'm a retired businessman. I don't think that the country has problem with economic freedom. The only problem is the country has economic freedom, but the only problem is that a lot of nepotism in this country going on. As far as we are a free enterprise country. I never depend on government to do my business many years back, or do education. I mean, that's the job of the government to give education. However, I think, do you realize that in 1970 that we used to send pension to Korean? Nowadays, we are buying things from Korean. Where is the mistake lies? The government have every 5 years, every year they have a 5-year economic plan. Industrial water plan is one of them, but they never implement it properly. And I personally agree that if you take infra out of this context and make it competitive, because the market is the world. And one failure of the government is that, I think, they don't put R&D in their budget. They never do, that's why we fail to be successful. And I think as economists, And you all, I think, this is the thing that we should advise the government. I don't know whether they listen or not, but at least we have to understand. How do you take this country from this level to a level that we should be on the top? Thank you.
Hai, semua boleh dengar kot? I have one or two questions. Okay, I have one or two questions. It's open to any of the panelists to answer. First, I think there are mindset in our society that the patronage system, such as NEP or DEP, was actually helped the Malays out of poverty, many Malays out of poverty. So because of that experience, they believe that the policy should be continued. And further, in fact, enlarge the policies to more societies. And in fact, South Africa also trying to emulate the policies to their countries nowadays. And there are some other justification that the government intervention also helped to reduce the inequality among the society. So with those so-called positive elements that people perceive about the government intervention, how do we reconcile that it is actually harm the society that they intended to help?
Baik. Thank you very much. Saya banyak pelajari daripada soalan apa tu pembentangan tadi, especially Terence Gomez. Saya banyak baca buku. And your master thing is about patronage. I think it's very good. I think I benefited a lot in my speeches, political speeches. As mentioned, yeah, I am from Parti Amanah. Just like to open up the view a little bit on the ground. I agree totally with the last speaker that I think political parties must, before and foremost, to be transparent, based on merit, not based on racial and religious ground, in the sense that it must be very inclusive, and that's what we're trying to be. But I think the whole system of this country need to be, redone all over again. For example, I've been a member of parliament for 2 terms, and the system of politics in this country is that your constituent expect you not to be a legislator that talks about all this, the role of politicians or legislator, but they expect you to become pegawai jabatan kebajikan, You have to entertain them 24 hours, And once you start to talk about this language, they say, hey, no, next time we change this segala, dia tak turun kenduri, dia tak turun tak tengok pi market jumpa orang, I'm not saying we must not embark to this, but I'm just asking some appreciation on what we politicians feel down there, in spite of the system. For example, Parliament, we only have 5 committees since independence. So kalau di negara lain dia ada komiti ekonomi, dia ada komiti contohnya social relation. That's why you go to the Parliament, say 8 to 4, for example. Tapi in this country you only sit 3 times per year. Or emergency sitting seldom, okay? So that in effect does not menggalakkan orang seperti kami untuk berfikir jauh lebih, untuk bincang ekonomi, untuk come up with a plan, new plan. Contoh, negara kita bila apa yang berlaku hari ini, patutnya panggil semua, kita bincang. Tapi the problem is that kami pula opposition kena panggil dan tak boleh masuk dewan, kena bincang di tepi dekat parade ground. So I think saya support 101% the thinking and your comment on the role of politician. I will insyaAllah do my best. Tapi at the same time also, others also must play the role untuk kita reconstruct balik negara ini dari segi cara parlimen bersidang, dari segi expectation the public towards a legislator. Ini pun satu cabarannya yang besar, and I believe that comes also under institutional reform, parliamentary reform, democratic reform, kemudian education to the voters. Which you nak, contohnya kalau you have one very good economy who can, you know, talk about economy and improve the well-being of the people through his economic idea, dengan seorang yang he doesn't know anything about economic, tapi he goes around turun lebih banyak, jumpa orang lebih banyak, so maybe he will win, not this guy. So saya mengharapkan ini juga perlu diambil kira dalam economic freedom. The whole system must be changed. And I appreciate your comment and your critics towards politicians. And I always say this: the future of Malaysian politics is you cannot have a racial and religious base. The future of politics, you must be very inclusive. And at the end of the day, it's the amanah, the trustworthiness that people give to you that where you have to deliver. And I think that is as simple as any politician can be. Thank you very much.
Can I add one more question? Actually, just now Wan Saiful showed us the most free countries, Hong Kong and Singapore. And I think the same question was also asked to, was also given to Frederick Hayek when the Chicago schools led by Milton Friedman went to Chile to help the Pinochet to revamp their economy. So my question is simple: is there any prerequisite of democracy before economic freedom, or we should maybe compromise democracy to be better in economy?
Okay, so I'll turn it over to our panelists now, maybe about 3 minutes each. Yeah.
Can I just
5 minutes.
okay. Very interesting. A few of the questions are related. I think this issue about yang bagi Datuk Mujahid timbulkan mengenai how do you balance between good policies and actually winning election. This is an issue that I'm happy that I don't have to worry about because I'm not a politician, and I'll be really frank here. I think we have this false expectation of our politicians. We expect politicians to be leaders when politicians are not leaders. Politicians are really followers of public sentiment. And if the public wants money, they will give money. They will have to give money. If they don't give money, they will lose. If the public, if the voters want them to repair longkang, baik lampu, attend wedding, attend kenduri semua, itulah yang kena buat. Kalau tak buat, kalah. So I fully appreciate the situation that we are in, and the only thing that I think needs to be corrected is not on the way our politicians work, because politicians, in order to win, I think we have to appreciate they have to do that. What we need to do instead is change how the public thinks, and this is something that requires a much longer horizon. If you're looking at changing it in the next election, you will not be able to do it. And this is also why I think, whenever I go into discussions or public, whether public or private discussions, I'm a little bit different from many other actors in civil society, because I'm really not thinking about what will happen next year or in the next election. I'm thinking my horizon is like 15, 20 years time, because I think the next election, the situation will be exactly the same. If we have a new government, the new government will still have to give freebies to the people, because if they don't, they will lose the election after that. So I think change will not come from politicians, change will come from society. And in order for society to change, they need to be people who engage with them at the ideas level. At the moment it's not getting there yet. I think we need to do that, but at the same time, of course, we need people who can fix the situation immediately as well. So yes, we need things to be fixed now, but the actual change will come much later on. It's a slow evolution process. This interesting this question by Cik Manzo, our our country does not have problem on economic freedom. I think this is having an environment where entrepreneurs can succeed and having an environment where businesses can flourish is very different from having economic freedom. You can have flourishing businesses if they know the right people in government and the government is completely corrupt. You will have that success in business as well. Having economic freedom is a situation where everybody have access to the slice of cake, the cake, and you can compete with the other player and you can defeat the other player because the playing field is equal. Dan saya rasa dalam konteks negara kita sekarang, kalau dilihat betul apa yang wujud ialah the vast majority of the stocks in KL stock market, for example, is controlled by the government through the various different GLCs. The presence of the GLC bagi saya menyebabkan wujud masalah-masalah yang kita hadapi sekarang, where every time something needs to be done to change the structure of our economy, the expectation is on the government. The government does it through the GLCs, and the cycle will continue. And this dependency of the government that we have will never end. Mungkin dia akan berubah daripada bergantung dengan kontrak terus kepada kerajaan menjadi bergantung pada kontrak kepada GLC, but the reality it is still the government. And as long as we have this, we will never get out from the middle income trap. And at the same time, I think we need to highlight the fact that 1MDB is a GLC. Ramai orang kata, oh, bagus kita ada Khazanah, bagus kita ada Petronas, bagus kita ada Sain Rabi dan sebagainya. Bagus sekarang. The logical end of usage of GLCs is 1MDB. As long as you have the patronage, as long as politicians are in power, you will have problems like 1MDB. And I really do not distinguish between the different. I do not, well, we need to distinguish between the companies, but they belong to the same family of companies. So the corruption that we have, maybe calling it corruption is a little bit confusing, harsh, because it is, many of the things are actually legal. It's more like leakages, it's more like wastage, it's more like money is being channeled after approval. It's not money being channeled without approval. So I don't know how to call it, but it is it is probably legalized corruption in a certain way. When is that? Who was it? Yeah, whatever you want to call it. But corruption, it is not corruption in the traditional sense. Because money is being passed from one party to another. Money is definitely being passed from one party to another. Whether it is illegal or not, that is questionable. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. I know I'm being asked about the call to Singapore, but later on.
There's so many questions and so little time. So let me answer question 1 and 2 about development and NEP together, and questions 2 and 3, 3 and 4, the political system being redone in Hong Kong and Singapore. First, let me say this. The NEP, in terms of its capacity, how it helped pull a major group of people out of poverty, and its capacity to create a new Bumiputra middle class is a major success. That is why Malaysia is well known for its affirmative action policy. We have not seen this kind of success of the capacity of the state to pull people out of poverty and create this new middle class. Phenomenal success. That is not perception, that is reality. That is why Fiji and South Africa wanted to follow the Malaysian NEP model. But the NEP had another dimension. Apart from poverty eradication and redistributing wealth, they had a dimension of Bumiputra capital development. And here, this is linked to the issue of patronage. NEP involved patronage. So the policy permitted patronage, and the patronage was abused. The abuse came when the idea was to help to develop Bumiputra capitals. But the policy was hijacked by UMNO members to enrich themselves. That is not corruption. Because this was the conduct of the policy allowed them access to it, and then they secured those rents, but they didn't employ them properly. They basically subcontracted it to others, mainly Chinese and foreigners. That's why the Chinese businessmen also could grow during that period. That's not corruption, that is a policy-driven agenda, but that is abuse of power by Upper, which meant they bypassed a lot of poor people. That's why today, if we look at among the poorest people in Malaysia today, they are still Bumi Putras. Among the poorest areas in Malaysia today are Kelantan, Terengganu, Kedah, Sabah, Sarawak, Bumi Putra dominant areas. How is it that if we have this policy, which has shown that it has the capacity to succeed, still has left so many Bumi Putras behind? Because from the 1980s, we saw this expropriation of all these concessions meant for poor Bumi Putras for an elite. That's where the problem began. That's why I agree with Wan Saiful. There's a difference between corruption and patronage. Corruption, legally defined, means by letter of the law, this is corrupt, so you can go to jail for it. This is very different from the patronage that we see happening. So, this comes to your question. As the NEP got moved, especially from the first 10 years of the NEP, the focus was on education. Get poor children out of the kampong, send them to good residential schools, then send them to good universities, they become the new middle class. Very good success story. From the 1980s, Mahathir comes in and he says, I want to create Bumi Putra campus. And then he begins to practice patronage. And then we see a shift from education to business under the NEP. And that's where things go wrong. So when that period began to happen, what we began to see was non-Bumi Putra businessmen began to fear investing in the economy. And if you look, for example, why is it that the economy is not growing so significantly now? It is primarily because, as on your point, R&D, investment in R&D. Investment in R&D in Malaysia is about 0.9% of GDP. It's very low. Most industrialized countries is about 2 to 3%. They're very low. So that means domestic investors are fearful of investing in the economy, in R&D, to develop new technologies and move up the technological ladder, because we have found to be one of the reasons they fear the NEP. Because the NEP allows the state to come in and take away these assets from these people. And we have seen this happening in many cases. In 2008, when the global financial crisis occurred, when they were discussing how to resolve the problem in the economy, Najib was advised by many people to bring an end to affirmative action. He announced it. It was in the Star, headlines, no more affirmative action. Because we need to get domestic investors back into the economy. From 1990, from the year 2000 onwards, we can see the investment rates are very low. Domestic investments are very low. Savings rates are very high. That means people are scared to invest. So, Najib announced no more affirmative action. And then right-wing groups, including Perkasan, Mahathir himself, and people within UMNO began to say, no, you cannot do this. You're cutting off our gravy trade. And so, if you look at the 10th Malaysia plan, from no more affirmative action, it was changed to market-friendly affirmative action. Nobody bought this. Nobody was inspired by this market-friendly affirmative action. It's an oxymoron, it doesn't work. If you look at the 11th Malaysia plan, there's no review of market-friendly affirmative action. If you read the 11th Malaysia plan, there's no discussion on affirmative action. They're even scared to discuss it now. Because why? The problem now is serious. Domestic investors are just not investing in the economy. If you read the 11th Malaysia plan, there's a lot of focus on R&D, but now P&C, patenting and commercialization, something like that. If you look at 10th Malaysia plan, a lot of focus on R&D, but they are not investing in R&D. If we do not invest in R&D, we are not going to move up. And here's the thing. We look at the middle class, we look at our businesses, and it is very clear that there is capacity there to rebuild this economy, to get us out of this middle income trap. We have a vibrant, intelligent middle class across ethnic groups. Very vibrant. Like you said it. You're willing to invest. You can make these companies grow. But they do not have the feeling of protection of their property rights. That if they invest, there will be no expropriation of their property because of these policies. So, how do you deal with it? Just don't mention it, the 11th Malaysia plan. That's why, to my mind, the 11th Malaysia plan is a serious case of policy failure. They have not dealt with the serious problems in this country. And I have no faith in the 11 Malaysia Plan, I'll say it openly, that it will resolve the problems that we are facing today. That's why we need to have a discussion on a real new economic model. Now this comes back to the question of redoing our political system and the Hong Kong versus Singapore model. Where do policy debates come from? It is supposed to come from our politicians too. Politicians are supposed to set up think tanks, and politicians are supposed to articulate their policy agenda. They're supposed to go down to the ground and tell their people, this is my plan of action. Our politicians do not have a policy agenda that is clear. When Najib came up with a new economic model, Anwar Ibrahim, opposition leader, ran out of parliament, called for a press conference and said, Najib stole all my ideas. These are my ideas. In effect, there's no difference between the opposition's economic agenda plan and Barisan Nasional. And when we looked at the 10th Malaysia plan, the new economic model, we were shocked. Because the new economic model was nothing but a rehash of Mahathir's ideas. State intervention, neoliberal ideas, privatization, and affirmative action all thrown into the mix and turn it up. Did it work? No. It may have worked for a while, but no longer does it work. Where's the new model? I don't see one. Why is Anwar very happy with this? Because he was part of Mahathir's administration which came up with this. The big debate today is Hayek versus Keynes. Neoliberalism versus state intervention. Which model should we take? It needn't be either or. Why can't we find a new way forward? Are politicians even discussing it? We are not discussing it. Who is leading the debate on this new model of development? Although we all say we don't like the neoliberal model because the neoliberal model led to extensive deregulation and privatization, and look at the mess of the 2008 currency crisis. Discredited. Then we look at developmental state and we say 1997 crisis, look at what the developmental state did, look at the 1997 crisis, cannot. So what is the new model? We turn to politicians too. We turn to the policy players, the think tanks. When I look at opposition, I don't see a new model. When I look at Barisan Nasional, it's more of the same. Are we going to get out of the high middle income trap that we're in now? Not if both coalitions are on the same page. Both of them agree that this is the way forward. If you look at the manifesto for the 2030 elections, Barisan's manifesto and you look at Pakatan's manifesto, you put the two together, hardly any difference. In fact, both of them started fighting whose ideas were these first. There were about maybe 7 or 8 minor differences, but basically the same. Where is the debate? Where is the thinking about a different way? Are people left behind? Yes. You go to Kedah and you talk to the people, they are left behind. You go to Kelantan and you go to Terengganu, especially rural areas, left behind. We ask them, what's the problem? I did a study of the 2013 elections. I went to every state. I asked them, what is the problem? What do you want? We want good education. We want good infrastructure. We want to get out of poverty. I said, this is basic. This is basic what you're asking. And these are rural areas. So I'm not even talking here about a great developmental agenda. What the people are asking me are telling me of what they want of their politicians. Even this they can't deliver. We have to hold our politicians accountable for the kind of models that they have. We are not discussing this enough. So I'm glad you raised the point. Yes, which school should we have? Which model should we take forward? The 11 Malaysia Plan was an opportunity for us to revisit the 10 Malaysia Plan. There was no roadshow about the 11 Malaysia Plan. There was no discussion about the 11 Malaysia Plan before they tabled it. Most politicians I spoke to in parliamentarians, I said, are you all prepared for the 11 Malaysia Plan? And they said, I didn't even know there's going to be 11 Malaysia Plan. What are you talking about? No, I'm serious. 10 Malaysia Plan, when Najib talked about a new model, he had a roadshow. He had NEC or whatever, NEAC and all that. They went town to town. I went and spoke to debate the 10 Malaysia Plan. Where was the debate for 11 Malaysia Plan? Did the opposition come forward to come up with an opposition plan, which is more viable? So, we need to sit down and talk about a developmental plan that is truly just and equitable. The neoliberal model has been described. Hayek is up. Anwar loved Hayek. Anwar told his boys to read Hayek. That's a fact. You can ask Anwar, he will not deny it. You can ask Anwar's boys, they will accept it. They loved Hayek. Mahathir loved the interventionist state, although he brought in many of Hayek's ideas to privatization and all that influenced by attention, but the heart of it, he was very interventionist. He privatized, but he still controlled the privatized. He never really privatized. That's a fact.
He corporatized.
ASEAN values.
So, what I will never say that Mahathir is Hayek, but Anwar was. Anwar believed it and he talked about it and he spoke about these issues. But are they now talking a new model? Are we sitting down and seriously reviewing these different models? So, I ask you now, you said, do we need democracy or development? I put this to you. The classic example of a country that developed very well with a democratic system, which many East Asian countries look to, was Japan. Japan, after the Second World War, the economy was decimated, and they rebuilt an economy which became the second largest economy in the world just after 20 or 30 years, second only to America, in an environment which was democratic, which involved a compact between state, business, and labor. Very just. If they can do it, why can't we? After all, Mahathir said, Lokist, but then he began to pick and choose what he wanted. I'll take this, but I won't take that. The model he really wanted and followed was the Korean model. Park Chung-hee, authoritarian, conglomerates, shables, well diversified, controlled by few individuals. He didn't like the Japanese model. He really liked the Korean model. That is the fact. He should have also at least followed the Taiwanese model, SMEs, which is far more equitable, which is what Abdullah did. So there are different models we can look at and take. But must we compromise democracy in the process? I say to you now, no. Just because Korea did it and Taiwan did it and Singapore did it, must we also do it? Why don't we say what Japan did? Democracy and equitable development. It can be done. But let's have the debate as soon as possible. And I really like to invite our politicians to come and join us in this debate. A serious debate. Truly for the nation to take them out of this Maya debate. Thank you.
Thank you. There's probably answer a lot of things. Well, I just want to focus on a very short one too. You talk about the NEP successes as Prof had said, correct. I mean, a lot of successes you cannot deny. And coming from a business perspective, it also become a problem, because I'm a business consultant and clients coming to me and says, we were so successful 15 years ago. It was precisely the thing, you were successful 15 years ago. But you're not successful now because the model has to be rejigged, has to be retweaked. What is NEP 2.0? What is NEP 3.0? But it was not created, the NEP was not improved to an extent that, well, those who have been dragged out of poverty achieve middle class status, then they have been built into an environment where they learn to compete, equip themselves, prepare themselves for regionalization, globalization. So when you look back at the thing, conveniently NEP become what? And it become detrimental to nation building, right? People are now skewed by politicians to think about birth rights, Malay rights, Ketuhanan Melayu. It all came from that basis. So that's why I say that was a success. But you have got to look at it in what context. 30 years ago, yeah, it was a success. It helped elevate poverty, helped create the middle class, it helped to create professionals. And then what's next? That was actually not answered, unfortunately. Then politicians say it become very convenient tool for me to then use to stay in power, because I have a lot of things to, a lot of instruments, a lot of resources for me to do. Repackage it, send it out, then it become a problem. So the question now is back to, the Pakatan 2.0, hopefully will be rebirthed into something, more enlightened. Yeah. I told you a story before, when we had dinner. There has got to be a counter proposal. Of course, it's very difficult to bring the Malay community out from it because for years they live in an idea that there is an NEP that protects them. There is an agenda that protects them. There is a dependence, on the Malay. And suddenly you can't also say that, get rid of affirmative action, get it all, then you'll be like left, distracted and say, what is next for me? So the politicians of Pakatan 2.0 has to think about that. What is next? How to give Malays enough confidence, but to show that yet you are not being abandoned, and to pull them apart, pull them up, so that they can come up to the level that new, enlightened in terms of understanding, in terms of capacity, in terms of ability to then compete, change the country, will emerge. That can happen. And that is where it brings me to the second question and what our YD from Mana have said. Well, we are so busy, you have to understand, we have to look at the longkang, we have to go to Kenduri, anak, isteri, the one member berkahwin, have to attend wedding, one attend a wedding. You have all these kind of things. It's because the reality is politicians in this country for the last 2-3 decades have been led by the people. Do you think Pakatan 1.0 was formed by enlightened political leaders? Suddenly they think that, we should form a Pakatan? No. 2008 result drove you to form Pakatan because the people wanted opposition to unite. You latched on that. It was not because you are ahead of the people, you tried to form coalitions. Bullshit. Hence, Pakatan 2.0 is driven by the same kind of principle. Because people don't want you to break up. They're going to punish you. That is why suddenly politicians change stand. Before that, they will say one thing. After Amanah form Pakatan 2.0, they change stand again. Because they have to look at their kerusi. Kerusi mana? East or west? If I'm on the east, I will say something else. I'm on the west, I will say something else. Politicians have been led by the people. If you are led by the people, old habit dies hard. Then you are not leaders, you are followers, like what Wan Saiful have said. We are the independents. We are more than willing, like what Prof said, to engage you anytime you want. Talk to your think tanks, debate your think tanks even. But the end of the day is that you must realize that you can't go to the people and say, sell change. That's what you do, marketing and selling. Sell change, give people hope, like what you say, selling integrity. But at the end of the day, you are saying that, I can't lead. You tell me to come to Kenduri. You ask me to look at longkang. I can't do all these things. Then why are you selling that? Right? You have states under your administration. Have you done that differently? The policies remain the same. Where is the local development plan in Penang? Have PAS spoken up when you were in PAS? Is Amanah going to take it up? What about Selangor? Have the developmental policy been so appeasing to all of us? Has it gone right? A lot of problems. Until and unless you have given opportunities and you show to the people that you can bring change, even if it's hard. Like Wan Saiful says, you want change, you got to look at 15 years, 2-3 terms, make a change. If you look at winning the next election, which is the main problem of politicians today, then it's not going to happen.